Okay, good afternoon friends. DK here with Mr. V Amps, and we have a Fender Concert 80s style. This is a Rivera era, they call those, and it's in the shop for some maintenance. It does work, that's pretty cool. We have some replacement tubes that were sent to us also, but it still had tubes in it, and they work at this point, so we'll leave it at that, but we'll go through the various issues. So we're on channel 1, which would be volume, treble, bass, kind of like a Princeton-ish kind of thing. So that works. I've got the reverb turned down to nil. If we pull out the knob here, that should put us in the drive channel, and this has a volume, which is like a preamp push, a gain, which is kind of the crunch, and then there's a master for that channel. So these kind of work all in conjunction with each other. So it definitely crunches up, but the complaint was that channel is kind of noisy and yucky and doesn't really work well. I don't know what this particular one, how it actually sounded when it was working right, but we can figure that out. There's a mid boost on this channel. Let's turn down the gain factor here so we get to a clean zone, and then there should be mid boost if we pull that out. Yep, that's doing what it's doing. And over here, I believe there's a brightness boost. So that works too. The reverb, if we turn that up, the reverb does work, but as we turn it up, there's more noise than we would like. And the presence knob was said to be not as dynamic as it should be. Now I can turn it all the way down, and I get mud. Turn it all the way up, and it's bright, but I'm almost getting more noise than I am positive signal. So anyway, like I say, we're going to give this some maintenance tune-up and see what's going on. The thing about the second channel, the drive channel, gain channel thing, I was expecting that to work less than it does, but that's okay. We'll dig in, see what I see. Okay, before we pull the chassis out and dig in here, just flip it around and take a look. The speakers have been replaced here with Weber Amsterdams, which is kind of cool. Weber makes good, efficient stuff. I like their stuff. There are 7 preamp tubes on this puppy, and 2 6L6 power tubes. I believe those are 6L6. And really big beefy transformers. Being, I think, about a 1983-ish, this was kind of the dark period for Fender after CBS kind of goofed up and Fender was sort of no more, and then they had their guitars and amps made in Japan, and this was sort of part of the resurrection of the company, and they wanted to build a top shelf tube amp. And they included some neat features. From a traditional Fender, you do have an effects loop here, and a line recording out, so you have your send level for your effects loop. You can out and then in, and then you have a line recording, a line out on there. So neat stuff. And of course, Rivera went on to have his own amp line, so cool. Okay, so here's an inside view. Got a lot of orange drops, only one of the blue drops, and those are usually, they're fine. They were associated with the 70s amps. There was another sort of more bulbous version of the blue one, and then there was a brown capacitor, and everybody frowned on those. But for the most part, we've got the orange drops, which everybody likes. And if you don't like them, then you're in the minority. A number of electrolytics, and I think these are interesting. Those are, I believe, opto-isolators, which should help reduce some noise. Sometimes they use them in the distortion circuit. I've seen them in the PVs before. I did pull a schematic. I'm going to be taking a look at that, but the handiwork on this is really sharp. A lot of dead 90-degree angles there to the various pots and jacks. You can tell a lot of care was put into the assembly of this amp, so kudos to the folks that assembled this for really putting in some top shelf care. The 60s, 50s and 60s Fender amps were well revered for their careful craftsmanship, and by the silver-faced 70s era that had dropped off a bit and the work wasn't nearly as tight, but I'm very pleased with the way things look here. I think that's really, really slick. And it's interesting because it looks like there's a adjust pot back here, and I believe this is actually a hum balance pot for the filaments, to actually balance the filaments on here, rather than a center tap for the filaments. Take a look. See, we have our filaments coming off of here. And they go to the light, tube, 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 and then we come over here to our pot, which has a ground here. So this would sort of represent the center tap. Now, I didn't even look at what that is, but I'm based on what I'm seeing in the circuit. Let's see, that is listed as hum balance. That is a hum balance pot. That's a very neat way to do it. Instead of just going with a 100 ohm resistor to ground, they actually put a pot in there where you can tweak it to quiet your filaments as much as possible. Very, very boutique kind of thing. And I know amps made in this era, although not super, super common, are very well revered, and I can see for the build quality why one would be very pleased with an amp such as this. So we've got some old school electrolytics. I think those are 20s. What are they? They're 450 volt. What's the microfarad? 4 microfarad. That's an awfully beefy capacitor for only 4 microfarad. But it is 450 volt. And then these are likely 2525s, like your typical cathode bypass capacitors. And let's flip it over and see what's on the doghouse side. Okay, and here we are on the doghouse side. We've got that lifted up, and we've got 220 285 volt caps, but they're 220s. So you put those together for 110 microfarad. So that's a lot of filtering on the first loop there. And then we have a 20, 20, 20. And that one I can't read, but it's probably the same as this one, which is, what is that, microfarad? It's probably a smaller one. I think these are interesting. I don't think they're actually leaking, but they kind of look like they were. See, this is 70 microfarad at a much lower voltage. 70 microfarad at 100 volts. Interesting. And let's see. So, we'll probably be ordering a few of these. These caps, the ends of these, they look like they were sealed with like maybe some kind of, it's not wax, it's some kind of glue, silicone-y glue kind of substance to seal the ends of them. So it looks like both ends of the capacitor are leaking, but considering that's how every single one of them looks, I'm going to think it was more of a dip they did at the factory. These capacitors are old, I mean they're 40 years old, but at the same time, usually we see things that are really melty and explodey and really yucky. For tubes here, this is Chinese, I can see that. We had one down the line that looked like, that actually said Fender on it. That one looks like an old RCA. We got a bunch of miscellaneous tubes. That's an interesting one. Kodak? It looks like it says Kodak on it. Does that really say Kodak on it? What does this say? That says, no, K-O-D-D-K? I don't know who made that tube, but that's interesting. CV4024? That's not even a regular tube number. I wonder if that's an interesting international tube. Could be. The tube chart is in the amp. We haven't looked through that yet. This tube has got a very, very darkened halo. And this is a 12AX7. It's a mystery tube, but I can tell by the writing that that's a General Electric. So that's cool. And again, we'll test all of these and see if any of these don't pass our rigorously aggressive little tester. That's another General Electric, regardless of what the brand says. Some of these GE 12AX7s really had a good sound to them, especially the longer plate ones. So it'd be nice if we had some survivors, even if we're just intending to use them as backups. That's a China tube. Anytime you see that metal clip on the side, that's a China tube. And that one's got a Fender logo on it. I wouldn't have expected Fender brand on China tubes in the 80s. That's a Fender branded tube, which is also Chinese. So these are probably a later replacement. The power tubes that were in there were Electro-Harmonics, which is fine. Those usually work okay. And again, he's also sent me quite a few more tubes that we can look through. The silver domes on some of these look a little dark, like they may have gotten warm and they've got a lot of hours on them. But we'll see how they do on our testers. But I think for starters, what we'll do is we'll, verify that we have some tired out caps and some resistors, and just go through and kind of do the standard issue maintenance, cleaning all the pots and all of that fun stuff, and then move forward from there. Okay, so it's a few days later, and we're back with our Fender concert amp here, the 80s version of a Fender concert amp. The first thing we're going to do the maintenance on it by updating, the vintage capacitors to current healthy capacitors. The owner was none too fond of the repair done here. I'm going to guess some joker broke the 3-prong ground plug off and then fixed it this way, which is, a perfectly acceptable way to fix it. These plugs are fine, but they look kind of janky. So, per request, we're going to put a new power cord on it, and then we'll proceed to change some capacitors. Okay, so I got the power cord changed. For you gamers at home, if you do need to replace something that somebody did chop the ground lug off of, changing the whole power cord is fine, you can do it, but wrestling with those strain reliefs is not a lot of fun. So it may be a good idea for, as the path of least resistance, to change that plug the way that somebody did it on this one before. So at this point I'm going to proceed to work on the capacitors here. We're going to be going up in voltage. Perhaps we're generally going to be staying with the same capacitance on these. So 220s, 20s, 70s. These wires, they're going to be in the way. Just for comparison, 20 microfarad, 500 volt, old on the left, new on the right. The old ones are showing above value enough that they are beginning to leak, so okay. Okay, so recapping in the doghouse here went just fine. 220s are still 220s. Instead of 285 volt, we now have 350 volt. Should be less leakage, a little bit more robust. Size-wise, they're actually the same diameter roughly, they're just a little shorter. Huh. Okay. 20, I already showed you the size difference in those. And these are 70s. The original 70s were 100 volt, and those were not readily available at the store, so we went with 350 volt, and they're almost the same size. A little bit beefier. Yeah, I don't like to go that crazy on the voltage difference, but I wanted to hit the 70 microfarads. And, you know, sometimes you gotta go with what you can get. So, doghouse area looks good to me. I'm happy. Keep going. Oh, yeah, I know somebody's going to ask me. The 20s were measuring 25 to 30 generally, where the new ones, pre-measuring them in, were like dead on. And the 70s were anywhere in the 80s, and one of them even hit in the 90s of microfarads. So there is some leakage. These, they're a little harder to measure, and if those are all fatigued, what are the odds that these that see even more voltage than those are probably fatigued also? Okay, so now we're looking topside. We've got a couple of unusual ones. This is a 450 volt cap that is 4 microfarad. Finding 4 microfarad is not easy to do, but 4.7 microfarad is, so that's what we have. And then our little bypass caps, we have quite a few of them over there, 3 back there, and then there's 2 more over here, and then I think there's one more hiding over, where is it? I can see it in real life, I just haven't found it on the camera yet. There it is, yeah, that gray Illinois sitting there. So the schematic says they're 25 microfarad. The ones that are in here are 22 microfarad. So I had a discussion with another technician about that, and essentially if you know, depending on position, putting a bigger capacitor could cause oscillations, and that would be bad, of course, so we're going to check for that. But even the vendors that essentially buy all of the capacitors for you and sell them to you as a kit for a ridiculously inflated price are shipping 25 microfarad to replace the 22s. So I'm thinking this is more of a day of the factory was out of 25, so we got an order of 22, so we didn't have to stop the line. That's what I'm assuming. But I do have some 22s if we need to revert to 22s, but we're going to go with the 25s because that's what's on the schematic. Okay, so top side cap maintenance is good. 4.7 450s in place of the 450s. The 22 25s, like I say, the schematic calls for 25 25s, and I've got 25 50s, so just a higher voltage version of the 25 volt cap. So that's good. I'm going to sniff for defective tubes with the orange here, and then we'll be ready to see where we're at. Okay, so we finished the cap maintenance. I tested all the tubes. That one that was 4,000 something or other, that's a 12A T7. It's like a European name or something. What is the name on that? I don't even know that. I don't recognize that name. CV2 or CB4024. Okay. B514. That tests okay as a 12A T7, so that's probably just like a European number. It's not the ECC number though. I don't know. Well, if it gives me any grief, but the tester passed it, and that tester doesn't like to pass anything. When we checked all of these, a couple of the RCA or GE-ish kind of tubes tested a little on the weak side, not weak, but if a typical new tube out of the box is a 9 or an 8, I believe they're like 7.6, something like that. So they're still very usable. They're just going to be a little bit lower gain. Still got the Electro-Harmonics power tubes, and I do have a Variac here because this ain't my amp. So I'm going to start us off at roughly 25 volts. Give it a minute here. Nothing interesting happened. Power light isn't up yet, not even trying. And roughly 50 volts. Can't tell, I don't see that the power light's on. Nothing's exploding. And about 70 volts. Yeah, we got a power light now. So at roughly 70-ish volts we have a power light. Got a little bit of tube glow there. I don't know if the amp's actually trying to output, but might as well find out. Yeah, even on low voltage, she's working. This is like 75 volts. So we still got a ways to go, but it's working. I don't remember if this is one of those that needs the tremolo. Wait, this doesn't have a tremolo. What am I talking about? But the reverb. The reverb had noise. I wonder if the reverb's still extra noisy. Can't even see it. Doesn't seem too bad, but we're not at full voltage yet. Presence definitely seems to have an effect. I think we're in okay shape so far, so let's go up to a little bit closer to our voltage. Let's go to... Hey, that was exciting, wasn't it? Just listening to buzzy noises while we turn up the voltage. So let's investigate if the reverb is still noisy as heck or if that has resolved itself. You know, it very well may have resolved itself in our general maintenance, and we'll do some more general maintenance of cleaning pots and whatnot. Okay, so I brought the reverb tank out, and when plugging the reverb tank in, having the ground on the input there has helped quiet the noise. So there's our amp at 3. Now our reverb before, if I got it, if we got it anywhere past like 3 or 4, there was a lot of noise. And there's 5. Okay, there's 0. There's 5. There's 10. Okay, by the time you get to 10, you can hear it. But let's just look at it at like 6, okay? That's just about when we start to get a little bit of hiss out of it. By that point, we're already surferific. So, and that's what the presence cranked up at 8. Presence at 10, which allows maximum high treble, i.e. maximum noise. Presence at 1. So there's 1. There's 10. I mean, I can really hear the difference there. So I think that's feeling good. Like I say, our reverb, I don't consider that noise level at this point to be problematic. When I heard it in our initial test, I could tell that sounded like a noisy reverb, and the presence worked some, but I don't think to the degree that it does now. So probably just a matter of getting some things refreshed. I'm going to guess what usually happens with a lot of these when your filter caps start to get leaky, okay? And most of those were. They weren't horrible. They weren't, life-threatening to the amp. But we experienced this probably 6 months to a year ago when we redid the Earth amplifier. Actually, the same owner, so thank you very much for giving me another opportunity to work on one of your amps. The Earth amp, it obviously had a really cool modified speaker, as this does too. But we pulled it out of the box and checked it over, and everything really worked. The controls were a little crackly, but it worked. So doing the maintenance on it, considering that amp was probably 40 years old, and this one's probably almost 40, 37, 38 years old, something like that. You do just get deterioration of components over time. So I have been monitoring things on this, see if anything is going south, and everything looks real good. I haven't had any issues or things that I've been worried about. I have checked the feedback or the effect loop, that's working. That's working okay. These jacks need a little bit of a cleanup, and we're going to go through and we're going to clean controls, but overall I would say it's a pretty happy amplifier. Okay, so our amp's owner sent me some Tungsol 6L6 GC STRs. I've used these before. I like them. They're in there now. He sent me 4 of them, hoping we could find a matched pair, and wouldn't you know, the first pair that I pulled out, according to the orange, which isn't tremendously accurate, they matched up real good. And to calculate the bias on this, you have to measure the transformer, unless you have, you know, some kind of magic bias probe. But you can see the blue wire to the tube over there and the brown wire to the other tube. That's where you're going to find your B+. So that's your the cathodes on this are grounded, so you measure the voltage at that point and at that point. And then to figure your current, the red wire from the output transformer. Boy, this is hard to show in here, and of course the dumb thing's on. Okay, see the red wire peeking out of that little hole there? Okay, so the red wire goes right there between those 2 resistors. That's the input to the output transformer. So I took some measurements here, and we have on the brown side 62 ohms resistance, the blue side 56. Voltage drop over here is 2.7 volts. Voltage drop on this side is 2.4 volts. That gave us our current of about 43 milliamps, and with a with a voltage on the tubes of 484 volts. I mean, this thing is right at the 70%, which is, you know, maximum power you want to do safely on one of these. So, go figure. When do you get plug and play tubes? Yeah, lucky me, I suppose. So, yeah, everything seems good. I'm happy with the way the maintenance went on it. I think we're going to put it back together. Okay, kids. Trying to troubleshoot the issue with the noisy reverb a little further. After putting things back together in the chassis, the noise level came up a little bit, and I was just trying to figure it out, because there's been discussions galore about noise and reverbs, and if I crank this reverb up to the gills, you can hear she's buzzing, right? Now, check this out. This is not an original Fender reverb tank. This is a tube amp doctor, and that's confirmed, number 1, by a TID part number, and number 2, apparently, for the cardboard cover for the bottom. That's the box it was shipped in. Somebody shops at CE Distribution's retail side, amplified parts. That's all good. Okay, so the grounds to the transformers and the spring and everything, the shell of this is not earth grounded, so it seems to be picking up noise. Now, if I ground the outer ring of one of these two, which would be the the outer coaxial shell, if I ground that to this rivet that's in the chassis there, the noise level goes way down, and the reverb still works. So I think that's my ticket. I'm going to put a little bridgey wire in there, just to put the outer chassis of the reverb tank at ground, and I think that's going to cut down on our noise massively. Cool. Okay, well, have a look at that. Somebody anticipated this ahead of time. There's actually 2 pads right here to take solder that will bridge that via a trace, that rivet to that connector. So apparently the engineers at TID thought that you may need to do this. They already bridged that one over there, but they didn't bridge this one over here. So if I just connect those 2 pads with solder and verify that the tank works, I think the tank will be much less noisy. Cool. And just in case you care what that looks like. Well, good. I can confirm now that the reverb noise was starting to become a little bothersome at about 4 on the dial. Now it takes about to 8 or 9 on the dial before you start to get a lot of hiss, hum, and bad sounds. Basically, by that point, by the time you get to that point, this thing will thunder you to death. So, you know, no realistic user would have it that loud, I don't think. But I mean, you know, before we could only get to about 4 on the dial and you start hearing it buzz. Now we can get it up to 9. So that's a significant improvement. I think we can get this put back together and give things a little test. But that was cool. Glad we found that. Thanks for your help all there at home screaming at me. Okay, I think we're working good. I got the reverb up at like 3, which is modest, and the amp is really quiet. We're on the clean channel. So that's cool. And then if we wanted to, you know, bring in a lot more reverb. So I think that that's more reverb than is useful, and the amp is not screaming murder over that. So I think that's good. And then we can go to the distortion channel. I've got the gain at like 7 or 8, so it's a little hot. We've got the volume. These two kind of work in conjunction. One is the preamp drive, and then this is kind of like the threshold of breakover and noise, and then you've got a master for that. Distortion channel is doing distortion. It would help if I could be a lot louder, but it's late at night and being loud is not really something we want to do. And we have all the ambient noise of our underground shop here with the water pipes and the fans and all the wonderful things we have to deal with down here. But yeah, I think it's cool. I'm gonna talk to the owner for a little bit, make sure everything's cool with him. But I mean, yeah, even on our distortion channel, nice low noise floor. On our clean channel, you know, nice clean low. I think our noise floor is nice and low. I like that. And our reverb, get it, you know, I would say anywhere beyond 5 is too much. This is the Fender concert amp from the 80s. I believe it's the Paul Rivera model. I tried to look up a little bit more on these just to see if anybody had some inside information on, you know, what the common issues were with them. And honestly, all I found was, you know, I'm Johnny Rockstar and I'm the king of amplifiers, and here's all the modifications that you need to do to your amp if you want to rock like me. Or then you get, oh, what's his name? Dr. Groovy. Oh, what the heck what is his name? Anyway, Dr. Groovy's music lessons or whatever. This is the best amp that Fender ever made, and if you disagree with me, then you're a bleep, bleep, a bleep. Come on, guys. But yeah, I mean, I think we're cool. The noise floor is definitely way better. The reverb is way better. We've got the fresh power tubes in there, which is cool. And everything is working. The knobs are quiet, and the owner has selected apparently not only his own speakers of choice but a reverb tank of choice, and we've managed to get that down to the minimum noise level with still plenty of signal. So I would call that a victory. So if there's anything else that we need to do with it, I'll let you all know. But I figure I will show the owner our video here of what we did to it and go from there. So thanks for watching and have a great evening.